Silent Hill Downpour is a game I was pretty excited to play. The advertisements and videos had me really interested in this installment of the franchise. However, I have to say, this is one of the most disappointing experiences I have had with a game in quite a long time. The storyline is probably the best aspect of the game I could talk about, but even that suffers from bad characters and some really shoddy writing. A lot of the characters I simply just did not care about. I didn't care if they lived or died, and to me that's pretty important in a horror game. The main character is interesting and well voiced, and there's a decent plot buried beneath some truly annoying characters, some of which you just want to beat to death because they make no sense and are paper-thin horror game cliches. The enemies of Downpour are very lackluster and just not scary and not what you'd come to expect from a Silent Hill game. The game does look good, and the world is well designed, and the water and textures look great, but it's brought down by some very clunky combat animations. The enemy designs are just so generic, it's extremely disappointing after how disturbing and creative the enemies were in Silent Hill Homecoming. The world is large and features some nice rain and fog effects, but it's also very tedious to explore and can be downright boring at times. I don't mind being lost and wandering around if it's scary and tense, but the enemies were more annoying than scary. Combat works, and that's it. It just works. You can kill enemies, but it's clunky and it never feels satisfying. The boss battles are fair, but there's nothing too amazing there. Melee combat is just really clunky and feels unfinished. The movements, lock-on system, it all feels poor. Using firearms is not much better. They sound like cap guns, and really they just feel quite dull to use. And the aiming is off. That's the main problem with the game. While some of the exploration puzzles and story can show promise, most of the time Downpour is just a downer. It's a real shame as the world and base storyline was extremely interesting, but it just went down a tedious and dull road. The game did have some good fog and rain effects, but it just was not scary or even as creepy as it could have been. The enemies were never disturbing or frightening, they are just cannon fodder for you to kill. If you turn up the difficulty, the enemies could kill you faster, but it's not because they're particularly tough to defeat or scary, it's just because the combat system is so poorly designed. If this game was made 6 or 8 years ago, it would have been a passable but decent experience, but today there's no excuse for dull and clumsy combat. Be thankful if you find a gun, as it makes enemy encounters bearable but never fun, just fair. Though the game does stay true to the franchise's roots, which was appreciated. At times, the world is interesting and fun to explore, and at times, with some well-designed puzzles and good set pieces that can be scary, almost like a thrill ride, but most of the time, it's simply a tedious and mundane experience that lacks any real suspense. I really wanted to like this game, as I think Silent Hill is one of the great horror franchises, and one of the last true horror franchises out there that hasn't jumped the shark. But with this installment, the horror seems less scary and intense, and it's lost some of its darkness that made for a creepy experience in the past. Silent Hill Downpour is not broken, and it is a playable game with playable combat. It's not frustrating, and you can battle enemies, but it's always dull. The puzzles are interesting and can be slightly rewarding at times, but to be honest, I was just downright disappointed and bored with this title. If you really love Silent Hill, it might be worth playing, but to me, this was simply a large letdown. Thanks for watching my review. Please rate, comment, and subscribe.
I'll meet you back down at the bus, okay? You're gonna get yourself killed.
Shut up. Keep your goddamn hands where I can see them.